ASMR Who. And today I'm going to be talking about the second 13th Doctor adventure for Big Finish, The Return of the Doctor. This is written by Rory Thomas-Howes. I listened to this last night and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it much more as it went on. Initially, when it started, I was not entirely sure how I felt, but by the end, I really came around on this story. I think I probably preferred the first episode of Vampire Weekend, but this was still a good story here. So the kind of basic premise of this, without giving too much away, of course, is that the Doctor and Yaz, the kind of story opens with them saving the day on this planet, which I forget the name. There's lots of silly alien names and stuff in this story. It's a race of armadillo people, peaceful armadillo people. They save them from this alien threat, enemy right at the start, with the help of a teenage Zarian called Talbot. But Talbot is, I was going to say incapacitated in the event. He's kind of ends up unconscious, and he's as he's unconscious and recovering, the Doctor and Yaz leave, but Yaz isn't happy about that. She's thinks that they should stop and stay and help out. And so they kind of have this argument, and the Doctor kind of relents and goes, okay, fine, we'll go back. But rather than going back a week or so later, which is what they intended, they end up 10 years later. So it's kind of got a similar sort of thing to what Aliens of London does, but you know, to a kind of much a very different kind of a way. And they arrive back 10 years later and discover that everything has gone wrong. This peaceful race aren't peaceful anymore, and what they've done has actually made things 10 times worse, and everyone blames the Doctor and everyone hates the Doctor. And yeah, I thought that this was, as I say, I was not entirely sure as it was going on, but I think the kind of reveals that you get as it goes on are really, they kind of bring the story together. And I thought that what was really great about this episode particularly was the way it challenged the Doctor and Yaz's dynamic and their friendship. They have some arguments in this. They have some disagreements, and that was really interesting. I thought it was a great. In the interviews, they talk about the Rory Thomas-Howes, the writer, who I believe is a first-time writer for Big Finish here, was kind of asked to pitch an idea specifically for the 13th Doctor. And the enemy in this is, there is a kind of an actual enemy, but the conflict in this story is about blame and about taking responsibility and about earning forgiveness. And I think it's a particularly interesting story to put the 13th Doctor into, because she is a Doctor who, the Doctor always kind of swans off and leaves before everything's fixed and sorted, but the 13th Doctor especially kind of does that and kind of does run away from things a little bit and doesn't necessarily, even with her family, even with her close friends, doesn't necessarily stop and talk about things all the time. And so this story kind of forces her to do that. It forces her to have those conversations. It forces her to think about the ramifications of the way she chooses to live her life and the way she chooses to travel. And I thought Mandip Gill and Jodie Whittaker played those scenes really well. I thought the kind of main character of Talbot, who is kind of introduced in media res at the start, as he's just kind of joined the Doctor and Yaz on this adventure and is helping them defeat the threat right at the start. But then, you come back 10 years later and his opinion of the Doctor is different, and he's not a teenager anymore. He's grown up, and she's trying to navigate that, and he's trying to navigate that, and you've got these other characters as well, and they have their own perspective on it. But the kind of the thing that makes people hate the Doctor and blame the Doctor is not just because of a thing like there is an influence that is making them believe that acts almost like a sort of a virus, and that starts to get some of the characters in this story. And yeah, the net kind of closes in on the Doctor in that way, and so I thought it was very interesting. Not incredible. I don't think it's a story that that will necessarily stick with me like the best audio stories do, because sometimes they really can do. I think you might assume that without the visuals, there's not lots that will make a story stick in your mind, but the best audio stories really do. I'm not sure that this one will, but I think it is successful in similar ways to Vampire Weekend. It really, the dynamic between the Doctor and Yaz feels very true to their run, and the kind of the interactions with the other characters, in the same way that there was a kind of a mystery of who the main baddie is in Vampire Weekend. There's a similar kind of that kind of a mystery in this story, and that kind of succeeded in the same way that I didn't really guess who it was until the kind of big reveal of what exactly was going on there. I didn't love the ending, but I was also not. The ending felt kind of obvious and a little bit maybe a little bit weak, but also for what the story is doing thematically, it feels right. So I wouldn't necessarily call that definitely a criticism, but it just felt a little bit obvious. But that's not necessarily a bad thing if it fits the story you're telling. But yeah, I thought the sidecast were good in this, and I thought that the world was a little bit. These are armadillo creatures, and a big part of their culture is their ability to dig, but they still have like buildings and stuff in a way that seemed a little bit maybe convenient for the plot, that they had buildings but you could just dig underneath them. But why are they not all living in like caves and stuff then? I don't know, it was an interesting wrinkle. And that leads to some interesting moments where the Doctor takes some risks and gets called out for it. Which is nice. It's nice to see the Doctor being a little bit reckless, and it's not just accepted, But yeah, I think those are my thoughts on the return of the Doctor. Not my favourite, but still a lot of fun. I'm very excited for the next story, which we're going to get in November, which is called Lionesses in Winter. I'm excited for that for two reasons. One, because it is a Christmas story, which obviously the 13th Doctor never got on television. And I think she's a Doctor really suited for Christmas, to be honest. The Titan Comics Christmas special they did with her was a lot of fun. And also because there's a historical story. And when this series was announced last year, when it was announced Jodie Whittaker was returning, and I made a little reaction, sort of thoughtless video about it, that was something that I said I wanted to see in this series. I wanted there to be historical stories. I wanted that to be something that they really took the time and the care to focus on, because that was a real highlight of Jodie's era. You know, stories like Rosa and Demons of the Punjab and The Witchfinders and Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, The Haunting of Villa Diodati, War of the Sontarans, to a little bit of a lesser extent, but those historical stories really good. I mean, Legend of the Sea Devils, not so much, but especially those first few in Series 11 were some of the strongest stories in that series, and it was something that they really took great care of in that run. So I'm excited for that. It's Lisa McMullen, I believe, who's written it, who I don't know that I'm familiar with any of her previous work, but she's a name I recognise from a lot of Big Finish, so a kind of a reliable name. So yeah, I'm excited for that. But what did you think? Have you listened to The Return of the Doctor? Did you enjoy it? I would love to hear your thoughts, and I will see you all next time for Lionesses in Winter.